Hello, thanks for watching on my official YouTube channel. I'm Reverend MeeLing, though I've been known by a lot of names. A lot. Before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, the list of names that I had been known by, depending on which group, depending on where I was, depended on how you knew me, as far as name wise. After my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, well, that was realistically, and is realistically, no different. I have, I guess I'm more well known technically as either Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, or Reverend MeeLing, or Lady Dori Belle, or Lady MeeLing. And even then, that's a very short list in comparison to the multitude of names I'm known by, specifically in person. By all accounts, before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, it depended on which neighborhood in one of the 5 boroughs. Like, for example, in Bronx, in one section of like a 3 or 4 block radius, I was known by one nickname. By another section of the exact same location area of just, the Bronx, I was known by another nickname. And so it was still me. I didn't change, just, what people knew me as. Depended on what I was known by. So after my head injury on Palm Sunday, and there are 5 boroughs in New York City. So, how many blocks per borough? And then, about 3 to 4 block radius, because especially back in the 1980s, 1990s, you had, and I was a child, so, depending on where my biological father was doing business at the time, depended on who knew me as what. And that doesn't even include or forget Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Only in Lancaster, Pennsylvania was I known as just simply Susan. That was it. Like, that was the only, in Lancaster, I was just known as Susan. That was it. Everywhere else, known by a whole bunch of other different names, and then, even including in regards to when I was a camp counselor, depending which group, when doing the camp counselor thing, what my nickname was. Yes, people still called me Susan, but each individual group had their own nickname for me. And I had been in camp from, the summer after kindergarten all the way until I could be a counselor in training. So then there's all that. And then, so after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, ironically, that kind of stuck. Where, depending on which group I was in, depended on what I was known as. Depending on which area, depended on what I was known as. And so, when I created my name of Lady Dori Belle, yeah, that was more well known, but I was still known as Susan. Or Susan MeeLing. Or some variation thereof. And so it was, oddly enough, something that I had been accustomed to since before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. By a lot. So where some individuals, you have a nickname or 2, or depending on, I cannot count how many nicknames I have had over the years. Because the list just goes on and on and on. And again, then when you take into consideration of New Jersey, okay, so I grew up in Marlborough Township. That didn't include the nicknames for where each babysitter or babysitter group was. Then you have to take into consideration of, depending on if I was in the Pines and what part of the Pines I was hanging out in, or Camden, and what parts of Camden, because again, similarly to the 5 boroughs, depending on which block radius I was walking around and hanging out in, depending on what my nickname was. Same thing with Hoboken, same thing with Red Bank, same thing with Tom's River. Like, it just depended. And it wasn't by me being any different than who I am. No. I'm still the exact same person. Well, now it's different because of the head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. But back then, just like now, I'm just me. I cannot tell a lie. Couldn't tell a lie before my head injury. Definitely cannot tell a lie after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Don't know whether it's because of the head injury itself, the subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain that took several years to dissipate and go away, the headaches, the migraines, probably the memory deficit probably has something to do with that, not being able to tell a lie thing. That probably has a really big, like, absolute on that. And then, cognitive disorders. And then having gone from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but the other stuff probably does, probably. And then there's like the scuba diving aspect, and well, you really don't want to lie in scuba diving when you've actually gone scuba diving. Like, it's really dumb and stupid, I would think, to lie when in reference to scuba diving, because not only are you in danger of putting yourself at risk, but then you're putting others at risk. And while it is a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, at the exact same time, you don't want to do certain things because you don't want to have certain issues. And so I could be weird in many ways. Nonetheless, when in reference to scuba diving, and that whole additional aspect, so in reference to my dive in Cozumel when landing at the bottom of the ocean on the boat area. Now, granted, the other scuba divers, they did not land at the bottom of the ocean. They stayed afloat. It's not that I couldn't keep my buoyancy. It was just that I kept, like, they were about 20, 30 feet above me, whereas, I just dropped down. Like, well, look, how low can I go? And so, that is what it is. Then when it came to Cozumel, I just finished Cozumel. When it came to Boca Raton in Florida and leaving from there to go out to the ocean over there in that area, that particular diver that was assigned to me, he didn't land at the bottom of the ocean. However, he was probably about 10 feet above me in regards, but we still, I didn't technically, I did technically land, but not initially. There was a point where when going through the different areas, there was like, I touched it. But, using my foot and being like, I touched it. Well, thin, but nonetheless, touched it. I touched it. It's mine. I don't care. It's mine. And then, when scuba diving at the Vandenberg, and in that part of the Atlantic area of the ocean, and landing. And that, and I had talked about that with other scuba divers well before actually going. Like, for example, when I was in Cozumel and speaking with those scuba divers, I was like, yes, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do the wreck dive and da-da-da-da. And one of the particular scuba divers at the time was like, yeah, okay, you're going to go do a wreck dive at the Vandenberg. Yes, I am. I have it all planned out. You don't even know. Yeah, okay, you're just telling me a joke. No, I'm telling you. I've got it planned out. Like, you don't know. You don't know. I am going to go and I'm gonna swim all around in there as much as I can within limitations. I'm gonna do it. And that particular guy, he was just, yeah, that's so funny. What a funny job. I'm telling you what I'm gonna do. And he was just, well, do you know how deep it is? Yeah, it's like 100 feet until the like tower or whatever. He's like, yeah, and how deep is a diver? Well, they're allowed to go to 130 feet. So, I want wreck diving training and stuff like that. And I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. You tell me no? Technically, the dive master on the Starfish Enterprise said no wreck diving, meaning going inside of the Vandenberg. I ain't go inside the Vandenberg. I landed where I landed, at the bottom of the ocean. I swam around where I said I was going to go I said I was going to go. I did what I said I was going to do. I'm just saying. Just saying. I did. I took the pictures too. Which I did. If you go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, has the links for the different books that I wrote, and one 3-part series in specific is The Adventures of Susan MeeLing, Scuba Diver Extraordinaire, written by me. So yeah, I did. I took the pictures. The pictures are in there and all that sort of stuff. And I named a whole bunch of little cute patootie fishies. Although, I do have to say, I'm kind of upset with myself in a certain regard. Not that I could have gotten the picture, like realistically. So there was a point where I very much could tell I was being sucked backwards. The irony is the picture, when you look at the crevice of the bottom of the ocean that I took a picture of when I was down at the bottom of the ocean, that stuff coming out, that illuminated stuff, that bioluminescence, yeah, that would be because of the suction from the little fishy. Again, my terminology, little fishy. And then turning around because it's like, you shut your mouth and don't you make me punch you in the face to defend myself. And this is where it was like, now in 2020, well, I guess I could have taken a picture, but I guess not really, because it was just one little tooth. Like that was all I got to see. So, I would have gotten a picture of like a whiteboard. Like that's all that picture would have been, is just a whole, well, white-ish, here's, that's technically the white part of the flag. However, and so since, shut your mouth, you better go back down to the bottom, and don't you make me defend myself. I'll punch you in the nose. You don't know. And then that little, again, my terminology, meaning, the fairy thing. You shut your mouth. And so, then it went, shut its mouth, and then, went back down even further into the Mathias abyss. It listened to me, obviously. I have to take my regulator out of my mouth. And so I was just like, blah, 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 because of the bubbles. And so, I told that fishy. As well as the one on the other side of that, whatever that's called in that. I don't know what this part is called in the Navy ship thing. I'm sure there's someone in the Navy or who has been in the Navy who could say what that particular thing that's holding the American flag um is. But there's a little fishy right there. Little fishy. A little teeny tiny fishy. Although again, the fairy thing, teeny tiny. Kind of like a bouncer named Tiny. When you think about it, in certain regards. So, However, after landing where I did, and surfacing, and obviously surviving, obviously. So, today is the 3rd of June, 2020. And so, in that regard, that scuba dive happened in early August of 2009. And so I cannot tell a lie, despite what I have been told by other people in reference to their opinions. And it was one of those, well, while you might be able to lie, I cannot. And I don't like lying anyway, because it just seems far too difficult to attempt to keep up with, especially with people, at least when I knew them. Not saying I don't care now, but, especially back at those days, genuinely caring, so I didn't, lie. And so, at one point in time when it was 2000, no, it was 2013. It's 2012, 2000, no, first time I spoke with someone who I'm referencing, it was in 2012, and it happened a few times into 2013. And there was a female who contacted me, at least as I thought, through FetLife. And she said she was from the UK. And she said that she had been a part of the group who had created ClubFEM. And so we had talked on that Skype thing. And she thought it was funny because she didn't realize certain aspects of how I didn't fully understand techie stuff. And so I explained certain things, and she was shocked that, like, I had never heard of Skype, that I didn't even know that there was a capability to call England. I had no idea. I thought that you had to, like, only write through, letters and then, send it through a post office type thing where they, rode a ship over to England to drop off the letter. Like, I had no idea that you could, like, call England. And, okay. I get it, ish. I obviously didn't understand techie stuff at that time. I technically still don't. Not the way a lot of other guys do, obviously. I know I mess it up. Not on purpose. I just do. I don't deny that. I try not to. I do everything I can not to cause problems to techie stuff, because techie guys have a hard enough time doing techie stuff. And, I don't want to make their job any harder or more difficult. So, when I was speaking with this female, or as far as I thought was a female, on the Skype thing, she thought it was hilarious that I had no idea that that was a capability. Now, I acknowledge I did not discuss about how I thought about, like, well, if you're gonna write a letter, and do 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 do, like a ship would take it across the ocean to take it to England, so you know. And so she was very much enthralled with that. And I was like, well, what's the big deal? I don't get it. And she was like, you don't see what the big deal is? And I was like, no, I don't understand why it's so funny. Like, how is that? How does that? You know, what's the big deal? I have a feeling that there are some compassionate, honorable, righteous ones that are like, well, it's a big deal in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then all the way. And nonetheless, I didn't know. And and so the female that was from the UK, she was telling me about ClubFEM in England and how it was started over there and then allowed to begin in the state of Texas. It's like, oh, okay. And so I believed that, because if I can't tell a lie, why would anybody else be able to tell a lie? I didn't realize. Obviously, I learned, ish. And so, meaning, it's still difficult because that, I got to remember that. And well, I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. So I deal with some memory issues as well as headaches and migraines. And then memory deficits and cognitive disorders. I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. So there's kind of a few things in that regard. That's a little, it's a bit much to deal with, but nonetheless. So, I wound up learning a lot. Nonetheless, in specific, I wound up learning that first and foremost, Austin is not where ClubFEM began. Apparently, ClubFEM began in Houston, Texas, not in Austin, Texas. Although to me, it makes so much sense for it to begin in Austin, Texas. Mainly mainly because of my memories from growing up in New Jersey and going to New York, and certain locations in a specific sort of way that, certain individuals frequented. At least I thought back then that I had recognized some of them from newspapers. Ish, because I read a lot. And so, to me, I kind of figured, it made sense to me. I'm sure it probably could make sense to other people. Like, well, when you explain it like that, yeah, I could definitely see those dots connecting in that way very much. Nonetheless, especially when certain things were explained to me in reference to the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter of ClubFEM. And so it was one of those, oh, well then, yeah, that definitely makes sense why I would, especially in that regard, that definitely makes sense why I would think it was Austin. that ClubFEM would begin in. Like, by a lot. Because of that, like, stuff that happens. In certain regards. In certain types of settings. And I thought that meant that was where it began. However, I think it was either February or March of 2020 that I was informed that it actually began in Houston. Which, to me, well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it does, with, like, businesses and stuff. And there's probably, like, a couple of, like, political aspects in that regard. But, Austin is the state capital of the state of Texas. So, just saying, it made more sense to me when I just thought about it on my own. I was like, oh, well, Austin's the state capital. As stupid as that probably comes across, but I'm sure it probably makes a bit of sense. At least right now. So, in reference to speaking with whoever I spoke with on FetLife, or from FetLife on the Skype thing, and that whole thing, I had no idea that it actually began in Houston, Texas, until more recently. And so, kind of feel a little bit of, anyway, so there was this event in ClubFEM in Austin. So the female in charge of the event had requested assistance and volunteers to help. And so I told her, I said, well, I know how to cook, I know how to run a kitchen, I know how to do certain things, I know, I can help with certain etiquette stuff in regards to the people coming in, because at that point, I was told that people were coming in from the different locations. I didn't realize that Houston was, and I apologize, I did not know. So, had no idea. So people were coming in from all over, and what I had been under the impression of and in understanding was people were coming into Austin as far from Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth. I did not understand that there could be a chapter in that reference. Makes sense now. Nonetheless, makes sense. So, I spoke with the female who was in charge, and I was like, so, what would you like me to do? I can help with the kitchen, I can help with this, and she was like, yes. Whatever. Just because she was dealing with a lot, and I was like, okay, I could do this, and this. So one weekend, met up wherever, and so spoke with the male submissives, and I'm like, so you're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And they're like, okay. Yes, Lady Dori Belle. That's like, okay. So, the day of the Thanksgiving event, I wore, I think it was a black corset. I had like feathers, like for a tail. And then I had like probably either a skirt or a tutu, one or the other, or a combination. It depends. But I also had heels on, which, duh. And the irony is when I was in Washington State, because of the floor being so slippery up there, I couldn't wear normal heels. in the state of Texas, wherever the event was, there was like gravel road and stuff, and I'm wearing stiletto heels, no problem. Um, Go figure. Anyway, so show up to the place and stuff like that, and I'm like, okay, let's get this stuff here, let's get this stuff there, da 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 da. You move this here, you move this there, da da da. What you need? And she looks at me, she goes, "You got it, you take it, no problem." So, and then like the turkeys had showed up frozen, and I think they were like 20 or 30 pound turkeys. It's like, oh, that's easy. Get that water turned hot. Okay, fantastic. Okay, fill up that and, put the stopper in there and put the hot water in there. Oh, give me some of that and do this and da 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 da. And the guys are looking at me and they're like, so you're just, well, you can't do this part. It's no offense to you guys. It's just, you can't do this part. And so did a bunch of stuff to get it ready to go so that way it could defrost, but at the same time, actually be moist because, turkey can dry out really easily. And so, did that with both of them. It's like, okay, this. You do that, you do that, you do that, you do that, you over there, you over there, you, right there. And so, okay. It's like, because I had to get everything ready before everybody started showing up. And so, got all that stuff taken care of, and then people started showing up to the actual event. And so I'm running around in the kitchen, and, real quick little pause. The irony is many, many, many years ago when I was growing up in New Jersey, one day my biological mother looks down at me and she said, "Stop being a turkey." And so I shuffled my foot. I was like, "Gobble, gobble, gobble." She didn't like that sarcasm. I dealt with the conversation because of that there, as well as back at the house when I was, anyway, so, and I was making a joke in reference to, the deeper you go in the ocean, it's technically colder, so, and then frozen turkeys having to defrost. And so I have a weird sense of thoughts and the way they go. So, the guys are doing the stuff in the kitchen because in ClubFEM, male submissives and female dominance. And so, okay, well, move the food here, move it there. This will fit there better. Okay, you brought that, you put that there. You get that over there. And the guys, they're just, okay, sure. Yes, Lady Dori Belle, fantastic. It's like, awesome. Thank you. You move. Okay, over here. Doop, doop, doop. And so, there were a few particular guys, and it's like, you need to move over there to the edge of the kitchen right now. And the guy, taller than me, he looks down at me, he's like, "What, Lady Dori Belle? You need to move whatever you're working on over to the edge of the kitchen. You need to get more air." And he just looks down at me, he's like, "What?" "Just over there. Go over there." "But I'm working." "Yeah, you can grab it and you pick it up and you can go over there. You are way too close to too much heat right now. Scooch." "Okay, Lady Dori Belle." It's like, "You never care about your health." "Move." And you just, okay. Whatever. And so, there were a few other situations where it was like, "And you." And the guy looks at me, he's like, "Yes, Lady Dori Belle." I'm like, "You get the trash right now. Let's go." And he, but nope. "Get the trash right now. Let's go. We're going to walk outside." And he was just, okay. And so we walk outside and walk, he had a couple of bags of trash. I had a couple of bags of trash. Walk it over to the, trash can and throw it in there. And, I'm smoking. Like, I have my cigarette, as I'm carrying it is what it is. Yes, I was in my corset. Yes, I was in my heels. It is what it is. And the guy looks at me and goes, "Can I say something?" "What?" He goes, "Thank you." "Oh, what?" It was a little much. Like, you just kind of how did you know that I needed to, like, no, I have this thing, I pick up on, like, I don't know how to put it, it's an energy thing. Nonetheless, you needed to get out of the kitchen, so, got you out of the kitchen. And he just looked at me, he's like, do you understand, like, certain things? Well, what do you mean? And so we talked for a little bit. We were just by the trash can, we were just talking, and I was smoking. And so, the guy was just, do you understand, like, that you picked up on, like, the fact I was about to lose it? And I was like, you didn't lose it, you're good to go. But if you need, like, a reason, if it's getting too much, just look at the trash receptacles. And then if there's not enough trash, then, in, like, all of them, just combine the trash bags. So that way you can go and take out the trash and get a few extra minutes to breathe. And the guy was like, you okay with that? Is it better than you collapsing or freaking out? I think so. And the guy was like, yeah, okay. So, it was what it was. And so, as the evening went on, just, I don't eat much. And it's not necessarily by choice, it's more along the lines of what my stomach can handle. And knowing that the female that was in charge, it was like, I know you're stressed, so I'm not gonna, like, and not gonna have you look bad or anything like that. I'm gonna go take care of it, and you relax, you do your thing, and all that sort of stuff. I'll handle the rest of this, and as far as, like, the kitchen and stuff like that, while being respectful to the males, dominant females, because don't want to overstep any of those bounds. And so just going through the different things and checking on the different males and stuff like that, and they're just like, yeah. Okay, fantastic, awesome. How is that? Are you chop that smaller? Make it bite-sized. Okay. That's what it is. So, in reference to the Skype thing, had spoken with that female that was from England, or at least I thought. And so, talking with her, and she's telling me all these different things that go on in the English or the UK as far as, like, their ClubFEM. And she was like, yeah, we don't allow professional dominatrix in the UK in ClubFEM. I was like, you don't? And she said, nope, they're not allowed at all. I was like, well, okay, that's weird, because if you started it over there and that's not allowed, well, that's what's going on over here. If that's not what you guys started it as, I don't know what you think about that. However, that's what's going on. And so that female was like, well, I will handle this. And I was like, okay. I don't know what that means. But you go do that. And so then she was like, well, I want you to Skype with this guy, get to know him. He's one of the submissives over in the UK. And, your personalities would mesh a bit. Oh, okay. So we talked a little bit, and then, he was doing whatever he was doing, and he went on his way and stuff like that. And so, I don't know what, I mean, now, in 2020, I obviously don't know if that's, like, actually someone or two people that were actually from the UK, or if it was, like, that techie thing that I don't understand. Especially since they said that it began there, and then it was allowed in the United States of America as far as the ClubFEM thing. And so since I found out in either February or March of 2020 that it began in Houston and not in the UK, I don't know how that gets fixed. But I would guesstimate whoever began the ClubFEM thing will probably know or know someone to something of something. So, however, when that discussion happened on the Skype thing, that was shortly after I had to step back from various aspects because of just everything coming to a head in regards to what I was dealing with. I mean, it was shortly before the paperwork was started, and other aspects. It was already after no longer being a part of the stuff as far as a lot of stuff in reference to the San Antonio lifestyle scene, because of all the stuff that was going on there. And then it was before I started dating the guy in Arlington, Texas, though it was after quite a few other things. So it was 2012 then. Yeah, it was 2000, well, maybe 2013. Nonetheless, yeah, like it was a very hectic time for me, just as me. And so, if that's important, there you go. I'm making light of it, just, there you go. So, yeah, I dealt with a bit, a lot. So yeah, apparently did not begin in the UK, though the lifestyle stuff did actually begin in the old world, technically, in older countries. It did begin in there. However, the aspects of ClubFEM essentially apparently began in Houston and not the UK. So I did not know that until recently. So there's that clarification. Although I still think it makes sense. I mean, I don't think that I would be the only person who could very much see that making a whole bunch of sense in reference to ClubFEM. Not that it did, apparently, but beginning in Austin. Because up until that discussion with that female who may or may not have apparently been from the UK, I thought it began in Austin, by the way it was described to me by other people that I spoke with. So that is just quite a bit of it's really confusing. Though again, it just makes perfect sense to me. that it would begin in Austin, mainly because of the aspects of where I grew up walking around in New Jersey and New York. So, but for the most part, in regards to the lifestyle scene, I mean, people did know me as Susan or Susan MeeLing. Very few people actually knew that I had my reverendship, but they did also know me as Lady Dori Belle. So, and I came up with the name Lady Dori Belle while I was in Carrollton, Texas. And I thought the name Lady, not knowing that there was a Disney character named Lady. No idea. I was looking at the aspects of partially from the nobility aspect from the Renaissance Fair thing in Bastrop County in Smithville the last year, that Excalibur in that regard of Excalibur Fair and that whole thing, but also the actual aspects of, I mean, obviously there's technically no nobility in the United States of America, like in that regard, the way it is overseas. However, that, and then, you know, kind of a little bit of a play on words in other ways as far as lady. And then, you know, be more ladylike. Well, if I put the name Lady, there you go. How's them apples? So, a few other reasons. And then Dory, having to do with the scuba diving and that sort of stuff, because there's actually a Dory ship, or boat or whatever, and a few other aspects in that regard. And then Belle, ironically, despite apparently there is actually a Disney character named Dory, but it's with a Y instead of an I. I learned that later. I learned that there is a Disney character that ironically is as it was described to me at the time by Skabuda, Dory from Finding Nemo. Irony, when in reference to someone I knew in Dallas, and if you change one letter in Nemo in a different way, in that regard, and the fact that both of them have a certain particular military background, nonetheless, Skabuda explained to me that the character Dory with a Y, is a well-intentioned fish that forgets things. It's really caring. Does all sorts of stuff to try to help, but that there's like a whole bunch of others who have a hard time believing that she's really good intentioned. To help save. And then later, before going on to the other part of Lady Dori Belle, later, after I had written Finding a Silver Lining and Finding the Silver Lining, after that was published, as far as the writings and the compilation portion, I was in Washington State, and on the news there was a report about a movie called Finding Dory, and as soon as my son came home from school, I was like, hey! He's like, yes, how's your day at school? And he told me about his day at school. I was like, you know what? And he goes, what? There's a new movie. And he goes, yes, Mom, there are lots of new movies. Well, no. You want to see the Finding Dory? Because, you like Finding Nemo. And he looked at me and he goes, Mom, I saw Finding Nemo when I was a kid. I'm a teenager now. You want to see it? We can watch it together. He looked at me and was like, okay. And teenager. So then we watched Finding Dory together. And as we were watching Finding Dory together, we talked during the movie because it was at the house and in Lakewood, and I made a couple of jokes, and my son just did the typical teenager, oh Mom, oh my God, Mom, oh my God, Mom, really? And well, isn't that funny? I mean, isn't that funny? And he just looked at the screen, and then he looks at me, he's like, oh my God, Mom, what? He goes, what are the names of your books? Which ones? And he goes, oh, the first ones. Oh, Finding a Silver Lining and Finding the Silver Lining. Why? Before Finding Dory, what was the other one? Finding Nemo. Oh my God, Mom. What? Let's just watch the rest of the movie, Mom. Okay. And then he asked a couple other questions and then, answered, and then back and forth. And then at the end of the movie, he ran upstairs to go, he said he had to go read some books. And I was like, oh, what books are you going to read? And he was like, I love you. I love you too. And so, and then, started working on my Medal of Honor art project some more. And so, but apparently, I can see certain correlations. One of the correlations is there are no Shell gas stations in Washington State. But there are Shell gas stations in the state of Texas. I did that math all by myself. Because there are seashells that are in the in the Finding Dory. And so, and so then, so going back to Lady Dori Belle, so then, and the seashells are put in the ground in the bottom of the ocean. In the Finding Dory. And so then ironically, not having any idea about Lady having been a name from a Disney movie, or Dory. I mean, I was told, but I forgot. I had injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. I forget stuff. And so then there's Belle, which I had like everything else, had a multifaceted view of such. So, there's the Liberty Belle in the Smithsonian. Nonetheless, Liberty Belle. And then my favorite Disney character when I was growing up was the Beauty and the Beast Belle, because of how she liked to read, and I liked to read when I was a child, and then how that particular character saw past the Gurar of the Gurar from the Beast, despite the actual story of Beauty and the Beast being very, very different. Nonetheless, that whole thing in reference to Belle from Beauty and the Beast, and then, being in the lifestyle, Belle to get service in a different way. And then, let freedom ring with the actual Belle being, patriotic and stuff. There's a few other reasons, but I only discuss a few because I could go on and on and on and on. And I really always really, really like that golden dress with as very tomboy personality-wise as I have been, just because I am, the aspects of that, really big poofy dress with the, girly stuff and girly stuff, that whole thing, despite how I am very, tomboy, and all that, girly, big poofy dress, and and then also, shortened for Tinkerbell because, fairies. I mean, come on now. And realistically, I've been into fairies a very long time. But not just fairies, because dragons get put into the fairy realm, and so do mer people, and a whole bunch, like the fairy aspect of when you go into the spiritual stuff, the amount of different types of spiritual in that regard, there's quite a few that get labeled as fairies, despite them technically being their own specific thing, and which is really funny because when you think about like the LGBTQP, like alphabet soup sort of thing. If you really think about that, then there is that aspect in reference to the fairies, but in human aspects in comparison to the spiritual aspects. And so, and and I mean, while in the United States of America, the modern generation, they know more of like the cartoon version of the Fae. But there are those from other countries that very much understand the different types of Fae and the different sorts of labels. A good book in reference to certain types of Fae is actually Brian Froud. And I mean, he goes off of quite a few, and then there's, what is it, R.L. Stewart? Oh, he goes into quite a bit in certain references, and then Doreen Virtue, few different ones. And angels actually get put into that particular set of category in reference to the type of fae, mainly because of their wings. But pretty much from what I've learned as far as words in this regard, pretty much anything either with wings or a tail, I guess from what I've read, is in that category, although there are certain ones that I really don't understand how they get put into that category. But that is what it is in that regard. But yeah, so those are a few aspects in reference to that. I just kind of figured that that was kind of important to, I mean, to some, maybe not necessarily everybody. However, in reference to discussing that, I thought that that was kind of important to, the YouTube official channel, Reverend MeeLing, sort of thing. So, but yeah, there's the amount of spiritual beings, realistically. I mean, and I'm only talking about the good ones. I'm not even going into the Seelie versus the unseelie courts, and then the different courts thereof, and the different branches and divisions, and just, there are just so many to go into that regard. And so, yeah, but nonetheless, yeah. So, I kind of, Tinker Bell, because that's like the most well-known version, but a condensed version in reference to the name. And then if you really think about it, that dress, that really, really girly dress for Belle, like kind of looks like a bell. Kind of does, because it's all golden and, poofy at the bottom and stuff. And then there's also the aspect of, well, it's kind of ironic with that gold and silver thing, because Tinkerbell is usually shown with silver in her wings. And so that's a whole other ball of wax in that regard. However, I really went in a whole different realm, and literally and figuratively. And then, you know, the whole like aspect of other stuff. So yeah, you know, that's what I had to say. Thank you for watching. Comment below and like and share. Subscribe to my official YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing. And if you really think about it, when like let freedom ring. Have a good one.